We have some fast solar wind from a coronal hole that's rotated into the Earth's strike zone that's bumped us up to storm levels, and a bunch of new bright regions are rotating into Earth view, and they're brightening our day. Those stories and more in the news this week. This space weather forecast is sponsored in part by Millersville University. Come get certified in broadcast space weather. Visit millersville.edu/SWEN. Activity on the sun sure is picking up this week. As we take a look at our Earth-facing disk, you can see that coronal hole, that finger-like coronal hole that's rotating in through the Earth's strike zone. This thing has been sending us some fast solar wind over the past day, and because of that sharp boundary there, it sure bumped us up to storm levels pretty quickly. In fact, it should keep us at active to maybe even storm levels over the next 24 hours before things begin to calm down, and it could bring a skosh of aurora down to mid-latitudes, but you're going to have to be pretty quick to catch it. Meanwhile, we also see on the east limb, a lot of new bright regions are rotating into Earth view. In fact, down in the south, the main players are region 29, 24, and 25, but we have a whole host of other regions that are going to be rotating into Earth view within the next few days. As a matter of fact, within the week, we could possibly have up to about 10 new active regions on the Earth-facing disk, if you can believe that. Meanwhile, all of this new stuff has actually boosted that solar flux back into the triple digits, which is good news for amateur radio operators and emergency responders, and even more on the far side is coming. As a matter of fact, as we take a look at our far-sided sun, this is stereo A, and it's looking at the sun just a little bit from the side. You can see all these regions in the south, including some regions on the east limb, and these regions haven't even been numbered yet. In fact, the one in the south actually is a solar storm producer. We're keeping our eyes on that. And we also have some regions in the north, including old region 2921, which I'll show in just a minute, which really looks like it's grown quite considerably on the sun's far side, and that could actually be a big flare player. And now switching to our synoptic chart that shows the entire face of the sun as like a flat map, we can actually use helioseismology in order to take a look at the far side that, our poor stereo spacecraft doesn't see anymore. So as we switch to that and we take a look at the HMI, that's the gray images here, you can actually see these are images from the front side of the sun. Back in in the end of December, you can see region 2921 growing quite quickly as it began to rotate off of the sun's west limb, and then it rotated to the far side, and that's where all that tan mapping is, as you can see. Now look, you see the dark shadow? That dark shadow is showing it getting deeper and deeper. That's region 2921 continuing to grow even on the sun's far side. And if you take a look in the south, you can see yet a second shadow. That is that solar storm producer that you could see off of the west limb or the east limb in stereo's view. So we actually have potentially two really big regions that are going to be rotating into Earth view here in about 4 to 5 days, and we could be getting back to having big solar flares and possibly Earth-directed solar storms. And now for your Martian Minute. It's been a while since we checked in at the red planet, and it's beginning to be dust storm season in the southern hemisphere. In fact, as we take a look at the dust maps from the Themis imagery aboard Mars Odyssey, we see back in late November, we did see some local dust ups near Jezero Crater and up toward Utopia, but those didn't last all that long, and they didn't really bother Perseverance rover or Ingenuity helicopter. But as we begin to move into December, we do welcome back the Marcy instrument. This is a full planetary imager aboard the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and we're so happy to have this instrument back because, as you can see, we have full imagery all over again. It's just wonderful, both north and southern hemisphere, so I couldn't be more pleased. And as you take a look in the beginning of December, you can see that aphelion cloud belt beginning to diminish. This is due to the southern hemisphere dust storms beginning to pick up. You're going to see that equatorial cloud belt begin to kind of dissipate over time. In fact, as we take a look at Olympus Mons and Tharsis Montes, you can see those big plumes sitting over these mountains. Watch those plumes diminish day by day by day, and that is due due to those dust storms in the southern hemisphere picking up. And that's all in the eastern hemisphere. But as we get to mid-December, you can see there's dust storms that are continuing in the south near Solis that move east toward Valles Marineris, and that kind of calms down a little bit. But as we move to the western hemisphere, and this is where all our Martian colonists are, we do see some regional dust storms in Promethea Terra that move east into Serenium Terra near the end of 2021, and they actually begin to move north into Hesperia, which is just below Gale Crater where Curiosity rover is. But believe it or not, in the north, it's actually the northern summer, and everything is beautiful. We're having both in Elysium Planitia and in Gale Crater have been nice blue sunny skies, and luckily also in Jezero Crater, where Perseverance rover and Ingenuity helicopters sit, it's actually a balmy -6 degrees Celsius, and the low is -78. Switching to our moon, we are now passing through the first quarter phase on our way to a full moon, and by the 14th, the moon will be over 86% illuminated. So you night sky watchers, if you want to catch those dim objects in the sky, maybe like some aurora, well, you're going to have this bright companion to deal with, so you're going to need to check your local rise and set times. Switching to our solar storm conditions and aurora possibilities over the coming week, we are in the middle of that fast solar wind stream that's hitting Earth right now from that coronal hole that's rotated into the Earth strike zone. It has bumped us up to storm levels over the past day and could easily do so again. In fact, at high latitudes, NOAA's expecting active conditions, but we have up to about a 50% chance of a major storm that will last possibly over the next couple days before things will finally begin to settle down. Now, mid-latitudes, NOAA's only expecting unsettled conditions, but we do have up to about a 15% chance of minor storm. And again, it should be over the next 24 to 48 hours, and then things will begin to settle back down. And even though we do have quiet in store for us in the future, remember, we do have those new active regions that are rotating into Earth view. And over the next few days, they could definitely be storm producers. So this next week, we could have even bigger chances for solar storms. Meanwhile, aurora photographers, if you're at mid-latitudes, you could get a fleeting chance for aurora, but at high latitudes, you definitely could get some really good shots over the next couple days. Switching to your solar flare and particle radiation storm outlook over the coming week, because we have a couple active regions on the Earth-facing disk, believe it or not, everything is not in the green when it comes to big flares. As a matter of fact, NOAA's giving us about a 10% chance of an M-class flare over the next couple days, and this is mainly due to region 2924. But believe it or not, this risk may actually increase over this next week as even more regions rotate into Earth view, and we might even see the risk for X-flares actually increase, maybe a skosh. It's kind of hard to tell as of yet, so don't quote me on it. Meanwhile, the solar flux, because of these new active regions, is increasing. We are back into triple digits, and as a matter of fact, we could actually see this rise up to 120 or even higher over this next week, and this is great news for amateur radio operators and emergency responders. The radio bands are in the green range, so expect good radio propagation on Earth's day side, and expect that to last easily into next week as well. Now, also, because we are still climbing out of solar minimum, the cosmic ray flux is a bit more intense than we'd like it to be, so you frequent flyers, and this does include aircrew who fly over 800 hours annually and fly at high latitudes and high altitudes, you are still just barely in the moderate range for radiation dose, and this does include prenatal passengers, so please take this into consideration in your flight plans. So the space weather this week is definitely picking up. We do have a coronal hole that's rotating in through the Earth strike zone, and it's sending us some fast solar wind that's bumped us to storm levels and could do so again. So aurora photographers, if you're at high latitudes, you're likely getting a gorgeous show over the next couple days. At mid-latitudes, you could see a bit of a fleeting show, but the aurora will be a bit more sporadic. Luckily, we do have a few solar storm players that are on the sun's far side, so just in case you miss aurora this time around, hold your fingers crossed because we could very well have some Earth-directed solar storms coming in the next couple weeks. Now, amateur radio operators and emergency responders, you're also going to be smiling because we have the solar flux back into triple digits, and with more active regions rotating into Earth view over this next week and possibly the week after that, you're going to continue to stay in the good range for radio propagation on Earth's dayside. So enjoy, even though you might have a bit of a risk of radio blackouts, because with all the new active regions comes the chance of bigger solar flares. So just realize it's not your rig, it's just the sun that could be making some noise. Now, you GPS users, well, things aren't so great for you right now. We do have the solar storm conditions happening kind of sporadically on and off, and that could be causing some issues for you, especially near those dawn dust terminators and anywhere near Aurora. And with that solar flux boosting, that doesn't help you when you're down at low latitudes either. So you could be having some dicey GPS reception at low latitudes, especially on Earth's night side near dawn and near dusk. I'm Tamitha Skov, the Space Weather Woman. Thank you for watching.